it was so convicting that I just remember telling the Lord, I will do anything you call me to.
We gathered the global church on every continent, for 25 hours.
The technology didn't exist yet. I wrote about how tired I am of faith. Like, faith is hard, and I feel weary of it.
Hey, Jennie, thanks for being a part of Don't Let the Dream Die podcast. Really excited to have you on and to talk about the dream that God has given you over these last couple of years. I'm really excited to dive into that. I know that the dream for Gather and what God's called you to in this season is really, built on the ministry that you've had for over a decade with If Gathering. And so really excited to just kind of to dive into that and explore, what God's teaching you in these days. So why don't you just catch us up really quickly and, maybe assume that people don't know the dream that God's given you and kind of what you've been wrestling with, and just catch us up on, what that looks like. And as you do that, just introduce yourself too, for those that may not fully know who you are.
Okay. Well, Aaron, first of all, this is super exciting. Congratulations on this new endeavor, because it is so important. And you have been such a dream defender for me and for our organization. And I'm so grateful for you. Truly, everything we're about to talk about today would not be possible unless Aaron Coe had said, yeah, I'm in, let's go. So thank you for who you are and how you have served what God's called me to do. And I've really roped you in along the way. I am a leader, a writer. I have 4 kids and a new son-in-law, and my life is really full and beautiful. I'm very grateful for the ministry that he's blessed me with and the fun that I've been having. I've been watching God move in incredible ways on earth. I've watched, I don't know how many young people, people in prison come to faith in the last few years. It just feels like we're in the midst of a harvest, and it has been so exciting and beautiful. And I also am blessed to get to lead something called If Gathering, and then now Gather. And it has all been one giant yes to Jesus. My life is very marked by a moment when I would say in my early 30s. My husband was a pastor, and we were church planners, and these were hard years. Our kids were young, and I read the blog of a girl named Katie Davis, who was in Africa at the time and adopting kids off the streets in Uganda. And it was so convicting that I just remember telling the Lord, I will do anything you call me to. And it was amazing. At that point of surrender in my life, he began to speak, he began to lead, he began to show me what to do next. And so I would say, while today we're going to talk about one big yes in the last couple of years, I think my entire life, especially since that moment, has just been a lot of little yeses. And I have seen the faithfulness of God. In fact, as scary as the obedient steps that he's called me to have been, I have always felt safe in the will of God. I've always felt like there's nowhere else I would rather be. And saying yes has meant more spiritual warfare than I could have imagined. It has taught me to pray. There has been cost. There's been many sleepless nights, many, if not sometimes in a given year, most nights I'm not sleeping, and yet I am peaceful, and I've seen the beauty and the kindness of God and how he shows up when you show up too. It's just been really fun. So about the last couple years, If Gathering was a ministry that I launched in collaboration with a lot of people. I mean, we wanted to see women step fully into who God had made them to be and what he had called them to do on earth. And so we did that. We went live, I want to say it was 2014. So I don't know how many years ago that was now, 11, 12.
11 years, yeah, 12.
Yeah, and so when we went live, we decided that anyone could host anywhere in the
Mm,
world, and that's what happened. And women signed up. I think that year there were maybe 1,500 events, but we broke the internet. I mean, so many people
yeah.
participated. It was
This is in the
incredible.
pre-COVID, before that was like the cool thing to
Normal.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if we're going to get really practical of like things that have worked for us, we've really been on the cutting, we'll call it, when it comes to gather, bleeding edge of technology. And
Right.
so back then, I mean, live streaming like that, hosting multiple events, that wasn't very common. I'm not saying we were the first, but we were definitely in the beginning of that movement that would grow, of course.
Right.
And so what was so cool though, it was so much more than a virtual hosting of events. These women really felt like they were, and still do feel. In fact, we're going to have a live stream or a Zoom tonight with, hundreds of them that have already signed up to host in February coming up. And so, we'll get on the call with a ton of leaders. They still feel a part of this story.
Yeah.
It really was a movement. And I was so blown away by that because we just stuck it out there and God really did the rest. And so, all these women just said yes. And so we did that for a decade. And about a decade in, maybe it was 9 years in, I got woken up by a dream. I dreamed
Mm.
that Jesus was coming back and he was coming back soon. And he was coming back, and specifically there was a clock and it was counting back 10 years. And I felt urgent from this. I woke up and thought, what would we do? And I thought, what I'm good at, what I've done for a decade, and I'm able to do pretty easily is gather people across the world. And I was like, what if we gathered the entire global church? When I thought about that, that was in 2022. I believe I talked to you a few months after that. You were one of the first
Yeah.
people I told the vision to. And you said, no big deal, let's do it, which is what you always say to me. And and the funny thing was is you said that, but the technology didn't exist yet
Right.
for us to
Right.
actually do what we were setting out to do at that time. But sure enough, a year later in 23,
Tell
we would.
tell us just some of the things that you're talking about there. Why don't you expound on that? Because the technology for live streaming, that kind of stuff, certainly existed, but talk about some of those things that may not have quite existed at the
I
time.
mean, imagine we're talking about the entire global church. That was what I felt like God was calling me to do.
Mm.
So I want you to think every language, every tongue, we've got a live issue. So not only are we talking about translations, we're talking about live translations at the same time. What would go on to be one of the miracles of this story would be that song lyrics, for us to sing the same song at the exact same time, would have to be translated live, every lyric of every song. I
Right.
don't know how many songs we sang in 25 hours at Gather, but someone does because they translated into 80 something languages,
Right. Right.
every single lyric live. And so that technology didn't exist. And AI would be the way we would translate into more languages than I believe at that point any conference or gathering,
Right.
including the Olympics, had ever translated
Right.
into. And so that's what I mean. And it really was just a overwhelming miracle. And we didn't know, Aaron. I mean, did you? Like when I said this to you, like what did you think?
Well, listen, I knew that you get enough people together under the power of God's Spirit, but you get smart people together that He's gifted and equipped. We can figure this out. I knew that your trajectory in history has always been one of perseverance and figuring it out. And, I knew we were going to figure it out. But I also, part of the confidence was I do really believe that we're living at a point in history where this global connectivity is absolutely possible. And so that's why, though the degree to which you were talking about gathering the church hadn't really been done before in that way, I knew we could figure that out because, yes, it was technologically possible, and smart people were working on it. Probably my proudest moment, and you just alluded to it though, was when our partners on the translation side said, "Hey, listen, we work on the Olympics, and they don't even do this, And
Right.
so, and I was like, "All right, well, man, this is great
Hey,
that
Olympics,
we're
call
figuring."
us up. We got
Yeah,
you,
okay, we
next
got you.
time.
We can help you expand your reach. But isn't that true though? Like usually it's gospel movements that are the pioneers
Mm.
for what ultimately becomes, cultural revolution. It's usually led by gospel movements of
Well, we're very
some sort.
motivated, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
we
yeah,
want people
100%.
to know God. And so that was my only goal. When I woke up from that dream, I thought, how can we, if Jesus were coming back in our lifetime, like what would we do with our time? What would we do with our resources? What would we do with our gifts? And it was just crazy clear, like we would be on mission. And if the entire church would realize their purpose and be on mission, then we could reach everyone, right? So we've got 2.5 billion people that say they're Christians, which is really wild that there's that many. It's a big
Yeah,
team we got on
yeah.
the earth. And then there's 8 billion people alive today. And so, there was just this idea that if we mobilize the 2.5, then the 8 will be easy to reach. And so that was the goal always. But, I think it might be helpful just to clarify what it is we're talking about in case people
Right,
they missed
right.
it.
Yeah.
Why don't you just kind of run down the stats of what happened and what it was on March 1st?
Well, so what we ultimately are talking about here, guys, is that this dream that started years ago ultimately manifested itself in its first iteration as Gather 25, where we gathered the global church on every continent, for 25 hours. And it started with a live broadcast from Dallas, Texas. And then we just went all around the world from live broadcast to live broadcast
Every
from those different.
continent, every
Right.
continent live except for Antarctica, which was pre-recorded and pretty incredible. I think everybody's favorite, just about.
Yeah, yeah. So when we even hit Antarctica, which usually gets left out when
Yeah.
you start talking about global things, and so we spanned the globe, and then we interspersed in between all those live gatherings, different stories of what God's doing around the world, and all of that was translated into 80 plus languages. Much of that done through AI technology that then we use live like fact checkers on the ground and cultural translators on the ground to help make sure that the AI was behaving itself. But really, I mean, the AI portion alone was, a bit revolutionary in just that it was all
Mhm.
live in real
Yeah.
time. And ultimately, when it was all said and done, there were 20,000 plus live gatherings of churches all around the world, from small dorm rooms or huts in villages in remote parts of the world to large gatherings. I think there was one gathering, correct me if I'm wrong, in the Philippines, and there were like 5,000
Yeah.
people at it, and that was organically organized by a
Yeah.
couple of people who just had a vision for it,
I
and
mean,
ended
we
up.
had, just to give a little color on that, we got pictures from Greece, from Rome. Catholic diocese had signs out, like big signs
Mhm.
where they printed our logo and put gather and invited their people. I mean, it was truly a gathering of the global church. Every denomination represented, every language. I mean, of those 86 languages that we translated to, 85 of the languages were used. So that
Right,
means that we really did gather the global
right,
church. It's
right.
just insane.
Yeah, I think so. At the end of it, when you add it all up, our most conservative, and again, we just checked and rechecked because you and I both, we never want to be hyperbolic when we start talking about numbers, but our most conservative figures were 7 million people gathered over those 25 hours, for Gather 25, which was incredible.
Good little
And
pilot, dude.
yeah, it was good little pilot. But I
I
think.
mean, we didn't know if it could work. We have to call it that because we didn't know. The technology, you were more confident than me, I think. But I had faith, you had knowledge, And
Well, again, I mean, listen, I just really believe that when you're in alignment with what God's doing in the world, He's going to smile on it. And it probably won't work out exactly the way you thought it was going to, but something good's going to happen. And that's exactly what had happened. I'm sure there are things that didn't go exactly the way we planned them to go, but all in all, yes, it was a great pilot.
Oh, so good. And we're not over. We're doing more. We're going
Well,
forward.
yeah,
I don't
talk
know.
about that. So,
Yeah.
all right, so that's the dream, and that is kind of the first iteration. But catch us up on what you're thinking about now as you've reflected. I mean, Gather 25 was what 8 9 months ago now, and so you've had time to reflect on that. So, what are you seeing for the future?
Yeah, I couldn't have imagined any more than that. It just felt like it was going to take everything in me, everything in our team. We could only imagine that we could pull that off once. It was so costly. But about a few months before, I realized, oh gosh, all of these relationships, all of this work we're throwing in to do it once, that groundwork, that foundation's been laid. And so why would we not do it again? It will only be easier. It will hopefully will only be cheaper because we can now rely on the relationships we have. So the idea is we will have Gather 27, but I should say this. I mean, I think people are listening to this, my guess is because they have a dream or because
Right,
they have something that's burning in them. And I
right,
would just say that if you're if you're someone that will just go for it and say yes. I look back at the I'll call it reasonableness of this dream. The the idea that this was possible or a smart thing to do with my life or I mean, you got to think how much it costs. I mean, we're looking at a budget of 18 plus $1 million when we set out for this to go live from every continent. I mean, just production
right.
alone, not to mention translation, not to mention venues, not to mention Africa, just Africa in general. We had to find
Which
LED
which
screens.
was probably what 6x larger than anything you'd done before,
Right.
budget wise.
Oh, no, no, no. Try 18. I mean, when you think of, we were a $3 million org that $1 million were raised a year. So we had 2 million
Okay,
tickets out. So now we've got a 18 million and we're saying it's totally accessible and free to the world. So we have and we don't want to do sponsorships the first year because we didn't want it to feel like there was an agenda. We wanted it to be
right,
pure and simple. And those were
right.
convictions I had, which I'm sure my, team was like, can we change your convictions, please? No, they didn't. They never acted like that, but it would have been easier. And I remember, but I knew what we were supposed to do. I knew how we were supposed to do it. And my gut was we've got to keep this pure and simple. And I really felt like there were times I knew things were clear from God. There were times it was just, I think, I think this
Right,
is
right.
what God is saying. But that 18 million, we had to raise, so it was 17 million we'd never raised before. And
Mm.
we had a year plus a little change to do it. And that was the scariest thing about it, I think. And there were so many times I thought, we really are doing something unwise. And I would have to go to our board and say, we've got these contracts out, but we don't have the money in yet.
Right,
And there were real conversations of, do we cancel? Do we trim way down and just go live from the US and bring in some global leaders? Those were real conversations. And
right.
every person I was accountable to that we were doing this together just continued to say, we got to trust God with this. Like, this feels like he's going to provide. He keeps providing. And I mean, I remember one day when I was, it was do or die. It was this time of year. So it was by the end of the year, we had to raise 2.5 million or we would not be able to go any further.
Right.
It had to happen. And I remember you had something to do with it. I got a call, from somebody saying, "Hey, there's this guy, I think he could help." And on that day, I was like, "Lord, like, I'm at the Red Sea and it's not splitting. And
Right,
time is
right.
running out and it's time." Like, I was angry, I was yelling, I might have said some cuss words to God. It was just desperate. It was like, if it
Yep,
doesn't part, and I'm asking you to part it today, because
yep,
if it parts today, I could sleep maybe the rest of December. So could you just like part it today?
yeah, yep.
And so that day, I go meet this guy. He has no idea what I'm doing. He doesn't even know barely who I am. I share it all. He's like, "Great to meet you. Thanks for coming. Bye." And I'm like, "Dude, I need $2.5 million." Like, I hit the table and I was like, "I think I could raise this much of it, but I need a lot of money." And he was like, Okay, I'll write you a check at the end of the year. Whatever you don't raise, I'll write you a check for the rest. And I mean, it was things like that where you just
Yeah.
can't make it up. Like you can't make it up. And
Right.
so
Right.
I do feel like there's so much. I just want to be honest because we can just run off all those numbers and say,
Right.
yeah, I thought of gathering the world and then we did it. And the reality is it's scary as crap. And I there's no way around it. And if you're really doing things that are going to change your little world or the big world, I think it's just full of risk and full of fear. And so I wanted to say that to everybody before we talk about the future, because the future is, I would be doing such a disservice to everybody listening if they felt like it was up and to the right, the whole
Yeah.
story.
So a lot of times when I think about like dream architecture and, not letting the dream die, I mean, there comes a crucible moment. There comes that moment
Yep.
that's, your chips are either all on the table and pushed to the middle or they're not. I mean, is that moment in this time in December, was that the crucible moment?
Mm,
What was the crucible moment for you?
that was a big one. I think that was the biggest one. And then there were more. I wish that was it. And I actually just wrote something. I haven't shared it publicly at all, but I think it's very relevant for this moment. I wrote about how tired I am of faith.
Hmm.
Like faith is hard. And
Yeah.
I feel weary of it, and
Hmm.
I like the days when my faith is sight. I liked
Hmm.
that day where he delivered. But
Hmm.
that day was prefaced with, you know, weeks and months and a year, over a year of not knowing. And then in the new year, we had to keep racing. And the event was
Right.
coming. And we hit the mark to get through the year and to keep going. But when we launched the event, when we went live, we still weren't sure we could pay everything.
Right.
And so I think there were so many crucibles. I mean, I I look back at that girl that lived that year and I feel sad for her. I'm like, that was so hard.
Hmm.
And yes, it worked out. But for a year and a half, I had to like believe it would and work every minute to see that I was being faithful. And then you go, gosh, am I crazy? And is this going to result in not being able to pay payroll for people that need to get paid? And there just was so many crucibles. But I'm so proud of her. I'm so proud of my team. I'm so proud of you, Aaron, all of us. Like, I just think it took so much grit and perseverance and trust and faith in something bigger than ourselves. And it
So as you
was,
think
yeah.
about like, we're all in any of us that are in this mission oriented work, there's a balance
Hmm.
between faith and wisdom. Because I agree with you. I mean, I think the
Right.
faith thing gets like overplayed a lot and, just have faith. Well, yes, but God also tells us to have wisdom.
Wisdom.
So what, like, because there are times where like, if you can't pay your bills, you probably ought to like think of a new plan or redirect your plan or, so
Right. And I think it
how
was a
did you wrestle
unique
through those tensions?
I think it was a unique year in that we were a startup, right? So I think
Mhm.
the you said the other day to our team, you said the difference in sustainable ministry and what did word
And pioneering.
pioneer.
There's a difference between pioneering and sustaining.
Yes. And so right, so we will never live like that again, right? Like we
Right.
did something impossible and it it required unique things to pioneer what we pioneered. And so I am very committed. And you and I talk all the time about what does it mean
Right.
for us to be sustainable. Now, we would never take the risks going forward, and nor do we have to take those risks that we had to take to pull this
Right.
off the first time. I mean, we were describing Narnia. This had never been done before.
Yep.
It was really hard to front load something that didn't exist. And so it was, yeah, I think that matters. And I think also I had a board that was privy to every step and were making those decisions with us. They were looking at the numbers with us. We were looking at the likelihood of what we thought we could do in the new year.
Hmm.
So it wasn't naive. It was scary, but it wasn't uneducated. And we had a lot of friends
Yeah.
that were in it with us. We had a lot of partners. We had a lot of donors. We had a lot of people that wanted to see it happen. And so I think wisdom was very much present at the table. I remember one thing my board said to me when we were deciding, do we keep going? And keep going in the same way that we were planning to keep going. And they all unanimously were like, I think, as we pray, as we look at all of this, you've got to keep going. And on the day, if the day comes where you have to take out a loan to pay your people and all that, we're going to stand with you and we're going to help. So there was a contingency plan. It wasn't
Right.
um, just we won't pay anyone, but it was a costly contingency plan, and they were shouldering that with us, and I was really grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah, that's so great. Well, I think that to me, that's the thing. When you're kind of having faith on your own and just making it up. I mean, I have these conversations with my kids, and our kids are about the same age. It's like, well, I don't know that you get to make that decision by
Right.
yourself. There's
I
somebody
didn't
else.
want to, right? Like I
Yeah,
I was that was like one of the most comforting days in the world, just to go, we're going to face whatever comes with you. Like
right.
you aren't going to have to face that day. If something happens and God, and it didn't happen, we're going to be there with you. And so,
Yeah,
yeah, nobody wants to be holding everything alone. I would say, even to people that are like, I can't afford team, I can't afford anything, but I've got this dream. I would just say, then get some volunteers that are willing to be like a board for you, because that has been the greatest protection in my life.
yeah. So, Jenny, you're a person that lives with, urgency. I was going to say extreme urgency. I don't know if it's extreme or not, but it's urgency, and I think that a lot of people are drawn to that because you're able to articulate what a lot of us feel, and that is, the world is confusing and maybe desperate at times, and we're kind of hoping that Jesus is going to come back soon. And you've put words to what a lot of people are thinking, but maybe don't have the wherewithal, the courage to say out loud. So as you kind of think about that, and as you think about the future, I mean, what's urgent in your heart right now? It's not obviously just sustaining an event year after year.
No.
There's something behind all of that. So what
Yeah.
is that?
You know, I was chat GPTing recently, uh, the four great awakenings. And at the end of it, it said, would you like me to tell
Powerful
you?
combo, by the way, Jennie Allen and Chat GPT. I
Oh,
mean,
we
that is
we are we are good buds. We work it all out together. And I just said, or it said to me after the four great awakenings, I was just rehearsing. I mean, that was something I studied in my life, right? I've been to seminary,
right.
I've studied it all, but I just couldn't remember, like, okay, who were the key leaders? What, I had about 10 questions. I asked it, and it spit it out. And then it said on its own, unprompted, it said, would you like me to share about the potential of a fifth great awakening that many theologians believe will be the final great harvest before Christ returns? That's what it said to me. I was like, well, yes, chat, I would like you to tell me about
Yeah,
that. And
please tell
so
us.
it goes on to describe all that's been happening recently,
Mm,
what's been happening in South America. I mean, right now in Brazil, the Send is
mm,
preparing to host a conference in 4 stadiums of young people. It describes missionaries being sent out from Korea, from just basically the global South. You look at Africa, South America. I mean, they're sending more missionaries than we are in the
mm,
U.S. It goes on to describe Gather 25 and the digital revolution of the world being able to worship together and know the gospel. It describes college ministries, campus ministry, which I've been a part of, with massive, revival happening there through many ministries, one of them being Passion, one of them being Unite. So I am standing there going, okay, just what I hold in holding Gather and holding If Gathering and holding the fact that I've been in the room for revival so many times, from Asbury to Unite to prisons to, I mean, just a few weeks ago I was in Minnesota and 400, 500 people came forward at an altar call. Like I just have been so blessed to see this happen over and over again. I know too much. And what I know is that regardless of if Jesus is coming back in a decade or 10 or 100, I have to be faithful with
Mhm.
what I know and what I hold. And I think that's true for all of us.
Mhm.
And what I know and what I hold is that the harvest is insanely ripe. I
Mhm.
mean, talking about God with neighbors, with a girl the other day who has walked through all kinds of horribleness with her family and everything else, and just is barely beginning a Bible study, like just kind of visiting, wouldn't go to church, but would come to a Bible study. Talking to her, open book, like she is totally wide open to the gospel. We stand in a moment where we are we've we're holding everything we need to see a huge harvest.
Yeah.
Is it the final harvest before Jesus comes back? I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. Where's all this going to go, right? I mean, a lot of things are aligning. Very little is left to happen.
Yeah.
The Bible will be translated in 2033. In just a few weeks, I'll go to a gathering of leaders, each of which has an important role in preparing the kingdom for every person to hear the gospel by 2033. So I think it's time we just lay aside differences. It's time we remember the main goal. And
Right.
I am watching. I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed to have this seat. I am watching leaders work together that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, never would have worked together.
Yeah.
I'm watching mission clarity like I've never seen in the church
Mhm.
before. At the same time, we've got all kinds of distractions. I won't go into them. Everybody knows them.
Yep.
At the same time, that is true. And yet, there are unprecedented realities to our moment. And I'm the girl, I was a cheerleader in college. So I am the girl who's like the eternal optimist cheerleader for the church. I believe the best of us. I believed that we could see God move in a way in our generation that he's never moved before. And I mean that because, and I don't say that arrogantly, I say that just soberly. Like,
Right.
what we have at our disposal. For the first time in the world, the global
Right.
church sang together,
Right.
prayed together, commissioned the global church together. This has never been possible. So we should see crazier things than have ever happened before. That should just happen based on the tools we've been given, I believe.
Yeah. So as we kind of start to wind this conversation down, as you think about and we project toward Gather 27 and a number of other things that are going to happen between now and Gather 27, what would you say to people that you wonder, how can I get involved in that? How could I participate in what God is doing? And specifically, how could I participate in something like the next global gathering of the church, which is going to happen in the spring of 27?
So, yes, thank you, Aaron. Let's go. Let's go to gather27.com and give us your email, and we will keep you in the loop. It's going to take all of us, right? This isn't like a good idea or an event. This is the church mobilized for the Great Commission. Like
Yeah.
that's the end game.
Right.
And we believe revival is happening, and that is serving to mobilize a church. That is serving to grow the church. That is serving to see a great harvest, for whatever is coming in the next decade or two. But I would just say, this is all of our story. And I don't think I think what I'm getting to see is truly one of the greatest group projects on earth, right? Everything
Yeah.
we do, it's a group project. And the way it got to 7 million people is that in Bolivia, someone hosted in a local church and they invited 20 people.
Yeah.
And that can be all of us. And so, and when we gather, it's more than that. It's so that we can be sent out and we can actually each carry with us the reconciliation that we've been given because of the gospel.
Yeah. Well, Jennie, thanks for being somebody who dreams bold dreams and not only dreams them, but puts them into action and is not afraid to, take the steps toward what God is calling you to. You're inspiration to, countless people around the world. And, we're all excited to play a small part in, cheering you on, but being a part of, what God has called you to. So thank you for that. And thanks for sharing your story. And I know that many of you that are watching this have been encouraged by Jennie's story today, and realizing that, behind every success story, there is a story of perseverance and a story of just showing up every day and working on the dream that has been given to you. So we just want to encourage you along those lines. So Jennie, again, thanks a lot for joining this conversation and being a part of it. And thanks for being an encouragement to so many.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you, Aaron, for being part of this. I mean it. It would not be possible, certainly not as successful, if you weren't a part. So thank you.
Well, my pleasure. Grateful to be a part of it. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Jennie.